Okay, and we're live. Um, okay, so today I would like to talk about this new Elvis movie that's been going around. The revival of his popularity, his music, and his movies. It's really taken the world by storm. It's very surprising to me that somebody from the last century has excited everybody just as much as he did, you know, 50 years ago. Uh, and I just keep coming back to Carl Jung and the archetypes and what he's embodying really to elicit such a strong emotional response in many, many people. Because the movie is still in theaters after months, and that's unusual for a movie like that, especially like a docudrama, which is what this is. It's a lot of it's very accurate in what happened with Elvis in his life, but it's dramatized. Um, so yeah, you guys saw the movie. What did you think about it?
Um, I don't know. One thing that I wanna just say is that having watched like the entire movie, I don't know. One really can't help but just feel for the man, for Elvis, for everything he went through. So first of all, like that's one thing what I would say. Other than that, it's like I don't know where to start even. There's kind of so much going on there, and like yeah, with what you said there too about like the Jungian archetype stuff. It's I do feel like there is something like that going on there. Like why well back in the all the way back in like the 50s, the women would be responding in that manner, and even now still. And I do feel like yeah, he is really well embodying, maybe tapping into something there. Maybe I'm gonna let Lynn also speak a bit.
Hmm. Well, it made me cry at the end the movie. Um, I've seen some other movies about it, or maybe it was a documentary. So I knew a little bit about his life from before, but it really is moving still. I guess it there's something relatable about it, his story, I guess, and of course not very like exactly, but in some ways, maybe that's what makes people love him so much, and also his talent.
Yeah, it made me cry too. It was a heartbreaking thing to see this guy that was in good shape for most of his life, and he's just kind of trapped at the International Hotel, and he thinks that he has to take all of these drugs and do all these different things that led to his decline of health. Let's just say, because it was a lot of other things. It wasn't just you know a little bit of weight gain. It was his heart, his digestive system, his endocrine system. Like everything was just so out of whack from all of these different medications and everything else to injections to keep him going if he would like pass out or something, to just get up on stage and then go back to his penthouse and be drugged up again just to get to sleep. It's very, very depressing. And he even said in the movie, that he's like a bird in a golden cage, but it's still a cage. It doesn't matter that it's all made out of gold, and you have this fancy penthouse, and you have whatever food you want, and whatever women that you want, and you're still just not free. You can't do what you really want to do. He really wanted to go do a world tour and get on an airplane and get out and see the world, and he could have fought the Colonel on a lot of that, but I think he saw him as a father figure to him and didn't really want to stand up and challenge him for whatever set of reasons, because I'm sure he would have won any type of lawsuit if he would have pressed it, because after he died, his ex-wife Priscilla and his dad did do that, because they were so pissed about everything, and they won the lawsuit, and they beat the Colonel in court, and a lot of things came out about him, and such as him lying about everything, lying about being in the military and all of these things, and it just didn't hold up in court the way that I guess Elvis was so afraid of. So that's what's even more heartbreaking about it to me, is if he would have pushed against this guy, he might not be dead today. He might not have been trapped in that hotel. He might have been able to go and see the world, and maybe he wouldn't have been on all those drugs. I mean, musicians usually do get on drugs, but they're usually, fun ones. And these were not the fun type of drugs. These were the type to just get you to go to sleep, wake you up and get you animated. I don't know what all they were exactly. They were like over 100 of them. He had all these different pill bottles in his bathroom, and from a doctor. They had this doctor they hired that got him whatever pharmaceuticals that was requested. Just full access to the whole spectrum of drugs. So I don't know what all was involved, but I know that that is what led to his decline of health and him dying. Just they kept winding him up and letting him play on that stage. And that was very sad.
Yeah, and it really, really is. It really, really is. And one really can just, I guess in that sense, just wonder, like, what could have been if he indeed, like he said, would have stood up against him. I mean, he did seem to have tried to, but then he backed down and he let himself be roped into the entire international hotel thing.
Yeah.
And then after a certain amount of time, he just stayed there, and eventually he just didn't seem to even I think it was in the movie that the Colonel even said that he didn't even care about it anymore. Like, he stopped fighting, basically. And I kind of feel like that's kind of what he wanted to do. Because the Colonel really seemed to have just had one thing in mind. Elvis was his piggy bank. He got money from Elvis, and he could also like play. He could gamble. I think it was also in that hotel. Said there's something.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just kind of used him in that sense for his purposes instead of let Elvis completely unfold. In that sense, he kind of, as a father figure, if he was one, he was a devouring one, because
Yeah.
he wanted to use Elvis for his purposes instead of actually being the encouraging father that would have wanted him to go out into the world and actually make something of himself that is like beyond. I mean, it would have been beyond the wildest imaginations at the time of what he could have achieved
Yeah.
if he would have just completely was allowed to blossom. Because I really do feel like there was so much more in there. I mean, if you think about something like how was that song called from like the special that he was also singing about, that was like a reference kind of to I Have a Dream from Martin
Yeah.
Luther.
It's If I Can Dream. Yeah. It was the song at the very end of his special where it had his name in big red letters lit up behind him. Yeah, that's a really good song. I listened to it several times. I went back and after I watched the movie, I went onto YouTube and watched all his original performances and stuff. And I watched the whole comeback special. What a trip! That was really a product of the '60s, man. Like it was all over the place. There were these strange skits that they did and dancing, and it was very psychedelic type of stuff, which was very interesting to see Elvis in that type of thing, because I guess in my mind I think of him in the '50s and doing that kind of old '50s stuff, '50s rock, and then he's in the 1968 with all the hippies and doing this hippie stuff. That was really trippy. I'd never really seen that or thought of him in that regard, but he had a career spanning like 30 years. That's a really long time during the most interesting parts of American culture. And he might have even had a large hand in kickstarting all of that too, and living through all of that and participating in all of that was very interesting to see and think about. But that comeback special, I think the Colonel served a good purpose in getting him out there, getting him known, getting him signed on to RCA, getting him into these movies that he wanted to do very badly. He always wanted to be an actor and do some serious acting. The only disappointing part was he didn't want to do music all the time. He wanted to do more dramatic roles and be taken a little more seriously, but nobody wanted to watch his movies unless he was singing. And that's unfortunate. They turned into like musicals, basically. But I watched I think it's Viva Las Vegas, that movie. That was a pretty good movie, and there was just a little bit of singing. I actually enjoyed it. It was about a race car driver, and Jesus, that race at the end was brutal. Like there were people's cars blowing up, going off a cliff, smashing into each other. Like people died in that race. That was insane. But anyway, I think if Elvis would have just been able to kick the Colonel out and do a full-on rebellion with his comeback special, he'd probably still be here. If he would have just cut him out, went through with the whole thing, not even show up to that fucking hotel, we'd probably have the guy still around. Things would have been a lot different. Because I think, that was peak Elvis. That was the peak of what he had culminated all into. Was, you know, that black leather jacket, getting on stage with all those people huddled close around him, playing with his original band members, and just really getting back into his soul. My favorite song that he's ever done is "Trying to Get to You," and he did that in the comeback special. The range of emotion and vocal talent that he displayed there was just astounding to me. I remember the first time I heard it, I was just amazed. I was like, I can't believe this is coming out of a human being. So, you know, as a dude, that part of it was amazing to me. But you know, I think it's something very different for women. You know, I think that it's hitting some different pressure points in their mind when they're watching him, which is something that I'd like to segue the conversation into now, is the female hysteria that he was able to elicit in his audience is a fascinating phenomena to me. This was also true of the Beatles, but I think more so for Elvis Presley. There was just something about the guy that drove all the women wild. I mean, literally. Why do you think that is? What do you think was going on? Do you think it was just sort of this sort of prim and proper thing that was enforced, and then all of a sudden there's this guy up there gyrating around, and it just took that little bit to start an avalanche of emotion?
Kind of in a way, yes, but I kind of feel like all of this stuff that was going on there with this whole, well, how did you put it, prime and I don't know how you put it.
Prim and proper.
Yeah, prim and proper. Anyways, if you just think about for instance the women, because I mean that's what we're talking about now. They have to be a certain way. There's a certain persona in Jungian terms they have to create, and be a certain way. And there's a lot of aspects of who they are that they have to repress, psychologically speaking. So the thing is that I kind of feel like Elvis represented something that kind of was bringing that up, and that's kind of why those women were feeling like, oh no, like this is something forbidden, because we're not supposed to be this way. But it's something that has been repressed into the shadow, that's been like pulled up by Elvis, and I kind of feel like there's something there, because we had talked about it another time, like before already, about Dionysus, and I kind of feel like something came to me afterwards. I was going to bed and suddenly it hit me about something that Carl Jung had said about the first animus archetype, so that's the male archetype for women. And if you think about like the prim and proper women that they were supposed to be, and really looking back at the period, kind of have that they're in Jungian terms animus, so the masculine side that takes action, that forces, or like can use like something physical to like actually do some physical action and be like no, and and be like have this fire embodied in that sense. I kind of feel like well, the first archetype for with the animals for women is the wild man, or like it's often depicted as like Tarzan or Dionysus, or maybe in this case maybe Elvis, and maybe like they were projecting that out onto Elvis, and that's why they were going so wild. Because I mean, with these different archetypes, for instance Dionysus too, and like other ones from different mythologies that represent that archetype, similarly women are going completely wild over them. And kind of the purpose what such an archetype, because we're now talking about an archetype, not Elvis, but what it does is that it's for liberation, to act as like a release valve for that what's been repressed. So maybe in that sense Elvis kind of represented that, because he was that release valve for all of these women. That's why they were going crazy, because he was doing something that's not wasn't allowed in the culture. So he's like he kind of was like through his music and through his dancing an outlet for that, for those repressed parts of these people that went completely crazy over them. And maybe in that sense, in a modern sense, it kind of it still serves the same function. It's still about the same kind of things that are hidden, and he brings his performance kind of brings that out. His shaking of the body and his pelvis moving. Elvis the pelvis, they call them. And I kind of feel like it's I don't know, like this like this Eros life force energy that he represents, or like that he was letting out, that was repressed in the culture, and that's why they were like going after him so hard too, because it was something it's a taboo thing in the culture. It was that kind of like because it was seen as something like bad. And the thing is that and that's why it was like repressed in many people's psyche, and that's why probably the women went fucking crazy, because they were projecting hard onto Elvis. So in that sense, did Elvis really embody it? I don't know. Maybe it was just the women projecting that onto him, but he formed as like a bridge for that coming up. And I kind of feel like in that way he kind of segued or like he made kind of everything that came after the hippie movement and a lot of other things possible, that was like about breaking certain taboos and actually expressing certain things that were actually in the prim and proper culture seen as bad. So in that sense, like maybe he was like the he was like the fuse that like led that led to an explosion of finally like everyone being like fuck this prim and proper stuff, and suddenly boom, there you have the hippie movement.
Yeah.
And like free love and everything else that came after, because it was like an explosion of instincts and things that were repressed, and it needed an outlet, and Elvis gave them that. And I think that's why he's so fascinating for all of these people.
Yeah, he was very different than most of the men these women were married to or going out with. He was not a stoic man. He was very emotional. You know, he had a lot to sing about. He had a lot to say. He had a lot to feel, and he wanted to share that with people. And I think the women never thought a man could be like that. And I think that was something that really blew them away. And they all wanted to be with him. They all wanted to see what it would be like to be with him, compared to a stoic man. you know, like a grumpy guy. You know, a lot of the men were just very grumpy, closed off. Probably didn't talk about their feelings, let alone sing about them. And then here's this, you know, sensitive man on stage talking about everything women wanted to hear. And I think that opened them up. You know, I think they got really sick and tired of their boring men that they were with, and that elicited a change in the 60s with men to become more sensitive, more feeling, more creative, playing music. You know, just about every dude in the 60s had a guitar and hung out in the woods with flowers in their hair. There's a big change after Elvis, and I think that that had a lot to do with it. You know, I mean, the 50s was a big deal. You know, it was right after World War II. A lot of men came back shell-shocked with a lot of problems. And, you know, they had the baby boom and all this type of thing. But the men that, you know, were like teenagers and not allowed to go kind of grew up with these dads coming back, not the baby boomers. You know, like Elvis was not a baby boomer. I think he was born in like 1933 or something. And so all of these men came back from war, and they were just not fun to be around. And I think those kids saw that, these teenagers, and they grew up and they just kind of got, I don't know, some of them felt like they needed to be that way, and then some of them felt like we need to remember to have a good time, like we won, like everything's great, like this is paradise. What are we all so upset about? And so a lot of music in the 50s, underground music that wasn't allowed to be popular, started to sow these seeds of the 60s. And by the time the 60s roll around, it's like a full-on rebellion against grumpiness. I'll just say. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of things. It was a rebellion against tradition. It was a rebellion against religion. It was a rebellion against families, traditional families. It was a widespread cultural rebellion. And with that said, I do think people threw the baby out with the bathwater with some things. But the reason that happened is because nobody listened to them. You know, they had some legitimate arguments of some of the things that were wrong, and they weren't listened to, and they were fought against, they were put in jail, they were suppressed, they were controlled, and that inevitably leads to resentment and people throwing everything out that you have to say. And you know, that's a mistake. I don't think Elvis was like that. I think he was in the middle of those things. You know, I don't think he was a full-on hippie. I don't think he was a full-on traditional grumpy man either. I think he was just trying to sing. He was just trying to sing a song in a world that wouldn't let him, and he just fought against that.
I think that it speaks to people, well, women too, especially maybe because they were projecting then their animus onto him, and it just tells kind of that they need to integrate more their own masculine side, so their instincts in this case would be probably it.
I mean, in that case, with regarding to the instincts and that, I think maybe like, because wasn't it like, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it also that like the whole like feminist movement started to pick up at the same time too in like the 60s and the 70s? I mean, it had been going on for a while, but I mean, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was going on in the 50s, and it really really picked up in the 60s.
I don't know. I kind of feel like there's something with regards to that too, and kind of I feel like it segues back to like what I said about certain things in the culture being repressed, and that being being part of it, with regarding for the women, with regarding indeed instincts, and maybe also I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, like what you said now with like the 60s and throwing the baby out with the bathwater and all of those things. I kind of feel like that uh, the people in the 50s were way too rigid with their stuff. Then the people after that were rebelling, and they were actually trying to bring back they were trying to do what any young person should be doing, and it's trying to revive the old culture and bring it back to life. And I think that's what they were trying to do. But then they were suppressed with regards to that, and then they threw everything out. And there's now a big rebellion going on with regards to that, because there's like, no, fuck all of that old shit.
Yeah.
Because they're now are like, these people are fucking mad at all of that, and I can kind of understand, because they've been like, they were suppressed at the time, and they were thrown into jail, and different people, including Elvis, were. I mean, he had to serve in the military to even get out of jail, or like not be thrown into jail. So it's like, so kind of I understand all of that, but I kind of feel like maybe like Elvis is kind of, or the period of Elvis is kind of the root cause of like a lot of other stuff that happened in the 60s and spiraling all the way out into now.
Oh yeah.
I feel like
I do
there's
too.
something about that that's very like powerful about that, because I kind of feel like it's kind of like the maybe the epicenter of sorts of like where it started. He's just like kind of like a symbol for this
Yeah.
kind of like, I guess, rebellion against this old like stoic attitude, and like and there's this balancing out needed, and I kind of feel like that was really what he represented. He kind of, they were hating on him, but really what it meant was just that probably through because of the war, but the men had lost their sensitivity probably because of the war.
Yeah.
And they lost that side of themselves, and that needed to come back into the culture so it wouldn't become dead and rigid. And then this rebellion eventually then happened, because they had become too rigid with regards to that, didn't allow certain things to happen. And and that kind of just segued out from there. And I kind of feel that, I don't know, maybe it still speaks to people today, because there's still like, maybe like this balance is still like needed to be found, because there's still crap going on about all kinds of different stuff, and there's still effects of what happened all the way back then.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, but maybe some people, it still speaks to them, and the story maybe perhaps too, the story learning about that, because I mean, I can understand that, like, you know, there's probably many people that are, well, can really relate to that in their own form, in their own life. I mean, they might not be Elvis and be stuck in a cage, but they're maybe stuck in a cage of another making. Maybe they're dealing with something in their family or their surroundings or whatever
Yeah, sure.
away. But I mean, the same thing is still true, because I mean, there's still these like devouring fathers and mothers out there that don't let their children grow up and try to use them for their own ends and stuff like that. And yeah, I kind of feel like he's kind of a symbol for that too, and in that sense. So yeah, I kind
Yeah.
of feel that.
Well, that's what
And
the whole
he's kind of,
that's what the whole culture was back then, is a devouring father. You know, like what was World War II? It was throwing all the best and brightest men into a fucking meat grinder. You know, it was getting involved with a bunch of other countries. Um, that's why they call it the World War. All the countries got involved with each other. You know, was that necessary? I mean, a lot of people think so, and I know that's a very controversial opinion. But when Vietnam rolled around, everybody was like, "Hey, I saw what this did to my dad. Fuck this. I'm not doing it." And the brakes were applied to the whole globalist thought of world wars. We're all in this together with the war. If somebody's fighting over here, we should get involved. Bullshit. Why? Why should we do that? So people stood up to the devouring father of the government. And as I said, I have a lot of problems with the hippie movement, but I understand why it happened. You know, like I said, I think they threw the baby out with the bathwater, and there were some things worth preserving, but there were also some things worth standing up to, such as, why exactly are we getting involved with anybody else? You know, maybe we should worry about ourselves a little bit more, instead of what's going on in Europe, what's going on over in Japan, what's going on all over these places. And, you know, I understand, you know, with the Pearl Harbor thing, but there were a lot of embargoes and other kind of globalist things involved with that led up to that attack. You know, there's a lot of other things involved with us getting pulled into a world war, and a lot of men feeling like it's okay to die, and then their kids seeing that rebelled against it. They were not all right with that. They were questioning this. They were stating that their life was more than just to be thrown away at the request of Uncle Sam.
yeah, I don't know. In that sense, I kind of feel like in Freudian terms, Freud would probably in Freudian terms it would be like thanatos. It's the death drive, and then the counterpart to that is eros. So that's the other half that then comes up. Jung called it anetodromia, I think it is called. It's like that the counterpart of something then comes up to face it at some point. I kind of feel like that's kind of what's been happening with that. Because after all that death, then there's something that counters it, and eros is also connected to love and like life force, energy, where thanatos is like a yeah, connected to death and really anything connected to that. So I kind of feel like that's kind of what happened in that regard.
Yeah.
And and Elvis was one of, well, the many, but one of the more famous ones, I guess, in that sense, that was like representative of that like Eros energy to balance it out. So maybe it's like, yeah, and then over time more and more people, like you said, rebelled against it.
Yeah. Mystic here has some things she wants to say about Elvis. She has watched the movie a bunch and read books about it, and she's been listening to our conversation here.
Okay. Hello. I guess I've got a few things to say about him. First off, I'd like to note that in the movie it is depicted that he and the Colonel had issues about the Colonel lying about his identity, which they did not. Elvis never found out the Colonel was lying to him. So he died believing that the Colonel was telling him the truth. Not to say they didn't have any conflicts. They still did have conflicts, but that he never found out that he was lying, and that's why he couldn't go overseas. Second of all, I guess I would like to touch on why I think women are drawn to Elvis, and I think a big part of that is sort of his rags to riches story, where he knew what it was like to be poor, and he never forgot that even after he reached such heights of success and all that money. He always was very kind to people. I've heard from his friends that he never really denied anyone an autograph or anything. I mean, he even kissed his fans out in the audience. He was just always, I don't know, he just always loved women, I guess, in general, obviously. And women were drawn to him, but I think he had such a good relationship with his mother that he always respected and loved women. And you could tell by the way he would perform for women on stage and talk to them. Also, I think I'd like to talk about the way he looks. If you really pay attention to his features, especially the way his eyes are set and his nose and his jaw and lips, he looks a lot like ancient Greek statues like Apollo, even the Dionysus statue. And I've also read that they used his face and studied his features to repair ancient World War II statues after they were destroyed in the war. So I think that's very interesting, even like his body type. So I'm not sure what all that would have to do with it, because it's not just the way he looks, it is his personality. But I don't know, he was just a very unique person. And in the 50s and 60s, I think he was somewhere in the middle. He took the 50s out a little ways because he was able to show his emotions. But when the 60s went, he didn't go out that far. He didn't just become free love. He stayed somewhere in the middle with discipline. I guess symbolically, with his masculine energy, he took his sword and cut through any confusion and always remained with full clarity. Like when he even got sent out to Germany and got drafted, it's not something he wanted to do, it's not something that his family around him wanted to do, but he took that situation and cut through any confusion and did it, and then ended up meeting the love of his life, for example. He would just take any instance, and he remained humble, he wasn't arrogant, and cut through with his sword and figured it out. Also, I'd like to say that I think another thing is he kind of was like Prince Charming coming in to save his princess Priscilla. So that also fed into what a woman looks for romantically. Yeah, I guess that's what I have to say. But can anyone else, when you look at him, can anyone else see like how his features might look like those of ancient Greek statues? Does anyone else see that? Yeah. Sort of like how the strong jawline comes out in his mouth and nose, especially the nose with the flat on top. He kind of looks like an ancient Greek, kind of the ideal appearance. Whether those were accurate or not, I'm not sure if those were 100% accurate to the people that they were built off of, but he definitely has that appearance to him with those features. And those people were loved. So.
I think you're making an interesting point with that. I haven't really thought about it before. Maybe I should look at some pictures one time more
Yeah,
of some
he looks
sculptures
a lot like
with that in mind.
Apollo, Hermes, Dionysus. And he sort of resembles a Statue of Liberty to me, with the nose and the mouth. But I thought it was interesting that they studied his face to fix some ancient world statues after they got destroyed in World War II.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. That is very interesting. I can see that in his face.
Yeah, I just looked it up myself about Apollo, Dionysus, and stuff, and Elvis, an actual picture of Elvis, and yeah, I can see it like with the nose and like with indeed. There is something about that, and I know that those statues were actually made to have the perfect proportions. That's what the Greeks were obsessed with when they made those statues of the gods, and they were looking for that. And well, I mean, Apollo and Dionysus kind of also represent like the perfect youth, like the perfect embodiment of youthful male energy.
True, and since he died so young in his 40s, he kind of never lost that. It's stuck in history as that same face that we all know. We never watched it change. But yeah, throughout history, even as much as he changed, he still remained the same guy, and I think that was a lot of his draw to women, because the hippies went out really far. They had aspects of Elvis being letting their emotions out, but Elvis still maintained the success and the resources and wanted to provide for those closest to him. And he, even with Priscilla after they divorced, he still spoke about how much he loved her and missed her and took care of her still, and all of his best friends that he supported. He never really lost any of that, and he always remained a humble person. That he just had a lot of clarity about himself, and I think that's what made him attractive. He didn't I wouldn't say he tried to really fight society like the hippie movement did, where it critiqued it so much. He took what it was and sort of became a conduit for what people wanted religiously. He didn't try to lead anybody off from the norm. He was a conduit for whatever people wanted to believe. And people got really upset about the comment that John Lennon made in relation to the Beatles about how they're more popular than Jesus. But he never said anything like that, because I feel like he was just a conduit for people to express that and didn't have to talk about that stuff because it just wasn't his concern. He just took society for what it was and cut his way through and stood out and went to the top.
I don't know. I do feel like though to just say, I don't know how accurate that is with regards to like the movie that he got upset about Martin Luther King and JFK being shot. That it really like moved him. I do think like, I don't know. I do kind of feel like if the Colonel wouldn't have been such an influence, he would have probably made more songs regarding that as well. Because he seemed to be quite passionate about that, like speaking out about these things.
That is true, but he didn't have to listen to the Colonel, I guess, and I do think the Colonel had a point, is that is not necessarily what his fans wanted to hear, or it might have created too much conflict, because he did listen to him, and that If I Can Dream was labeled a protest song, but I do think that's the way that he was able to voice that, because I do think he was concerned about what was happening. But I think the Colonel brought him back, because he was sort of being torn, especially during the '68 special, between and it talks about the movie between the hippies and the old traditional values with the Colonel. And I do think he was getting pulled very hard towards the hippie movement with the people that he was surrounded by, and the Colonel was bringing him back. And he always did make the choice to go back to the Colonel. He never went too far out there. So it's hard to tell what would have happened and how his fans would have acted if he did go too far out into the speaking out on society. And it might have turned out to be better for him. It's hard to really tell. But, yeah. He seemed to stay somewhere in the middle, pretty close to the middle on that kind of stuff, whether it was by intention or not.
Yeah, he could have went real extreme with it. I think he did do that through his "If I Can Dream" song, like she was saying. And I really don't know how much good it would have done in the long run to pick a side, you know, to go fully on one side or the other, with any of that type of thing. Because as she said, the Beatles did that, and when John Lennon said that they're bigger than Jesus, everybody burned their records and smashed them and burned their T-shirts and their pictures and all of that stuff, and not long after that, you know, they broke up. And started doing their own independent projects with each other. It didn't really serve the Beatles in the long term to pick one side or another, because there were a lot of conservative people that enjoyed the Beatles, and the Beatles, I guess, were like, fuck those people, and they stopped listening to everything they had to say. It became impossible to mend the fence, to come into the middle where at least conservatives and liberals might meet each other at their concerts and perhaps have a conversation about music instead of politics and get somewhere. And I feel like Elvis was able to maintain that popularity between liberals and conservatives, having them attend at the same concert, the same place, the same time, and it's lived on in that way to now. You know, there's plenty of liberals and conservatives that still love Elvis because he didn't make a strong statement for one thing or another, and he did stay in the middle, and it's become a type of unifying force through music, which I think music is the most powerful thing that we have on this earth. Musicians are the most highly paid individuals on the entire planet. More than movie stars, more than scientists, more than soldiers, more than anything and everything. They're the most highly valued people that we've ever produced. And I think that's for an important reason. They don't belong to one side or the other. And when you start picking sides like that, I think you're actually doing a disservice to humanity. The purpose of music is to unify people, not to rage against the machine, you know, or say fuck you to this one group or this other group. It's to humanize us, to bring us together, to dance, and to have a good time. And forget about this bullshit, you know? What about being a human? You know? And I do think that's what Elvis was all about.
Yeah, and that sounds kind of what you're then also speaking on is kind of like like, yeah, that balance between, I guess, yeah, the conservatives and the liberals, between the new, the old and the new, and finding that like proper balance between it, like that you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but you also don't let it. You also don't let the bathwater stand there and let the baby die in it.
No, yeah, exactly. You got to take
So
the baby
it's,
out.
it's yes, just take the baby out.
Yeah, take the baby
Carefully
out.
take the baby out, and then you can throw away the bathwater.
Yes. Yeah,
And
and
and yeah.
I think that's what
But
Elvis did. I think that's what he did. I think that's why
Yeah.
he's still popular to this day. He took the baby out and kicked that fucking bathwater over the balcony.
Yeah, and in that sense, I feel like that's kind of one important thing that's missing still, even today, that there's just not this proper balance between the old and the new, that there's something that can allow the new to give this new life to the old without throwing away the baby with the bathwater. And yeah, and I kind of, in that sense, like what you were saying about Elvis and about music, and I do hope that it could actually bring people together, especially now in the times that we live in, that people are so divided and hating on each other, and all of that other bullshit that's going on, that someone like him, even if he's not alive anymore, but that his energy that's in his songs would still uh, be this symbol for people to come together again,
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle, put aside their differences, and just enjoy Elvis, and have this effect. But I do wonder, like, in the modern sense, like, what do you feel like? What is intriguing people to watch it over and over? What's speaking to people, like now?
I'll let Mystic speak on that. She's seen it way more times than me with her girlfriends, and yeah. What do you think? Why? What is it about that movie? Why do you guys keep seeing it over and over and over?
I think that movie depicted the story of what happened like nothing else has. It kind of brought him back to life in a sense. And now you've got Austin Butler, who played him, who is alive, and it makes it kind of just like it was back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It's a conduit again for something beyond us, like a conduit to God, so to speak, because Elvis was an extremely religious person his whole life, and that's kind of what got him started on the music, and how emotional he was that communication with God. And I think you can see that in the movie. You can see his story. He's like a flawed hero, a flawed king, whatever you want to call it. He had his problems, but that was also the theme of his story, is he wasn't perfect. He had these problems, so he was relatable. He was relatable in the sense that he was poor, and he rose up, and it kind of gives you like gives you a sense of possibility of that's possible for anyone. But really, I just think it brought back to life what they witnessed when Elvis was actually alive. It kind of rekindled that spirit and carried the flame on, because I don't think we have someone like that in our pop culture today, someone like Elvis. It's just never been done the way it was back then. So I think that's why it is re-emerging with this movie. The movie very accurately described and embodied the archetype and the feelings. It also initiated feelings within people that it initiated back when he was actually alive. So it's kind of a bridge in history that we're reliving and understanding it again.
Yeah, that's a better explanation I could have come up with. I mean, I liked the movie. It was really good. It was the cinematography was wonderful. I liked how it was shot. It was kind of a hybrid of the experimental cinematography of the '60s, but
But brought back down to earth, sort of. In a
yeah,
sense.
yeah, modernized and not too much, just enough to give you a taste of what those times were like and how they were experimenting with things and trying new things and like the multiple camera angle shots and on one screen was very interesting and very '60s in their style.
I think it's appealing to both men and women, which it might be mostly women, but I know several men that have watched it more than once too. It's appealing to people of different religions, different ages. It's kind of bringing us all together, like Elvis did when he was here.
Yeah, that's a very good point because I like it for totally different reasons that she does. I am very interested in the sound of his voice, what he's singing about, the songs that he chose. Because it's interesting. He never wrote any of his own songs. He picked songs that he loved, and he had relationships with people that he loved, and he asked them if he could sing their songs, and he would do them in such a wonderful way that could just knock your socks off. And that's very interesting to me that he never felt like he should write his own songs. I feel like there's something there about that. I don't know what exactly, but he just wanted to sing. I don't know.
I think he wanted people to have the religious experiences that he did when he heard the song. Because I like in the beginning of the movie where he's at that revival, and he's so overtaken after just listening to the song that guy was playing on the guitar in that little shack that he continued to play throughout his career. He was trying to help other people feel what he felt, I think, in relation to God. In believing in God and a higher power, it helped him feel that, and I think that's what he tried to help other people feel through his singing, and I think he was successful at it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what he was trying to do. I think he did do that. That's effectively what did happen with his career.
And I don't know, like it makes sense because I was like then talking from my mythological archetype lens with Dionysus and all kinds of stuff like that. But if you really look about it, what really has been done in those old ancient rituals, it's also been done through singing and music, how they would connect to something higher, and that's the whole purpose of these old rituals. And in that sense, he kind of tapped into that. Maybe that's why I picked up on that, and because it's like, hey, I see here like some similarities with that, but in that sense, like from a Christian lens, I would then say like, yes, he was using music to like you said, connect people to something higher, to God. Yeah, to like give it, like you said, like give them this experience. And music can be such a powerful way to do that, to actually connect to something much higher than yourself in a way that really like comes over you, like indeed like happened to him in the beginning of the movie.
Right, yeah, and I liked in the movie when when he was singing the last part that made everybody cry, the Unchained Melody. I liked how when it said he's coming home, that it flashed back to him running to church revival and having his experience, because he always said that was his favorite music, because I think that's what started him on his whole life, really, his whole purpose. It showed him his purpose.
Yeah, he had a whole thing of just bringing cultures together, bringing political ideologies together, and mixing them with the best parts and leaving out the worst parts. And I really think he achieved that, because he sang a lot of different songs from all kinds of cultures and made them popular to where people would start singing along with them no matter who you were. Maybe that's why he didn't write his own songs. Maybe that's not what his goal was. Maybe he knew that there were these wonderful, wonderful songs out there, and he wanted to bring them out into the limelight where everybody could see them, where everybody could enjoy them and love them. And I really think that went a long way towards bringing people together.
Yeah, and that satellite concert, which that really did happen, where 1.5 billion people tuned in worldwide, that was just absolutely unheard of, and it still is because it's never been done before, like they spoke about. So he was recognized all around the world by people because he just has something about him, I guess like an archetype or something, that's attracting people with different cultures, languages, whatever you want to call it, attracting them to him, to who he is, and what vibe that he carries with him that breaks language barriers and cultural barriers. What do you guys think of him? Because we're kind of from the area of the southern, which is part of the United States. We're sort of from the southern culture, so that he was from, so it's more relatable, I guess, to us. But I would like to get your guys' perspective on it, since you may not be from this type of area.
Yeah, well, I'm from Finland.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I guess the perspective is different. But we, even here, like, I think people listen to Elvis too. Like my parents probably too listened some to it. But in school, we were taught about Elvis, and people do love his music here too, and him as a like a person, and I like that. I personally most of all from his songs, I love the "If I Can Dream" song from the comeback special.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks to me. I think I know it almost by heart.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I love that song too.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I'm originally from the Netherlands, and my grandpa, he doesn't just like Elvis. He loves Elvis. He's like a very, very big fan, and he watches Elvis too. He has like old VHS tapes and like old stuff from Elvis, and he watches that, and he listens to Elvis, and yeah, and I know about Elvis from him, really. It's where I know him from, and Yeah, I know that from my grandpa. It really means a lot to him. Elvis means a lot to him, and yeah, can become quite emotional about it too. And I don't know, regarding songs, I would say also um, the one that Lynn mentioned. I think that one speaks the most, really, to me.
That's cool. I've heard a lot of people that have said that with that specific song.
I don't know. I think it's just, I don't know, a powerful song. I don't know. There's something about that song. And in a way, it's like, yeah. I don't know. I just really like wish that he could break free from the Colonel at the end and actually have that world tour and actually still be alive. But yeah, it's damn sad.
It is. Yeah. I hate it. It was extremely depressing at the end.
Well, I guess we can console on the fact that I think he would be happy that this movie has gotten so popular at this time because he thought that he was never going to do anything lasting, as he said in the movie. So I'm glad that this movie's been made and people all around the world are watching it, and it's reviving him back all around the world. So in a sense, he has done it even though he didn't do it in his real life, and I guess I'm happy about that. Because it was a big part of what he wanted, was to go on a tour around the world, because I think he loved his fans no matter where they were and wanted to give that to them to see it live. And now that that's impossible, this movie is allowing that to happen in a sense.
It's like making it continue. I mean, he is global.
Mm-hmm.
A global phenomenon and loved all over the world. And I would just wanted to say still about If I Can Dream. I think I like it so much because it feels like a prayer. And it's a sung prayer, and it's so beautiful.
Well, that's interesting. It's probably, I've not heard that, but that makes sense. I can see that, and that might be what he was trying to do in it. Like he's talking to God in a sense.
I feel that too, Lynn. I think you hit the nail right on the head with that one. Yeah, that's why I like it too. Well, that's why I love it. I love that song. It's
Because he is talking to somebody in that.
yeah.
I guess if you think about it, it does seem like he is praying with that prayer, wishing for that to happen, for people to unite and get along.
Yeah, it is a prayer.
Yep, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Me neither.
I guess we felt it, but we hadn't put the words into it and explained it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes it's easy to feel something, but then it's difficult to put the words to it. Sometimes it's just that way. Sometimes it is just that way. Yeah. But I do hope that now still then he could be this, like, I guess, beacon of the middle of bringing some sense of togetherness again, even though he's himself not alive, but like his like, I don't know, the energy that he embodied, that it lives on, because there is something about that energy that was in him and kind of was like re-embodied through this actor Tim Burton, I think it was called, you said.
Oh, the actor that played him?
Yeah.
Austin Butler.
Austin Butler. Okay. Yeah, must have thought about another actor.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Tim Burton directs movies. He is also really good.
He's the guy that does Nightmare Before Christmas.
Okay. I don't know why I thought about that dude. Anyways,
It's all
probably
good.
brain fart. Getting a bit tired, but anyways, yeah. But I kind of feel like he's been like embodying that same, that same energy, and I kind of feel like it's important that type of energy, and I kind of feel that it's very much needed, like right now, to bring people back together and to actually I don't know, connect back, because I've been feeling that for quite a long time myself, that like something needs to be there, and I've said to some friends in the past also about like, man, we need to have a symbol about bringing people together. There needs to be some form of symbol, and it's like I couldn't figure it out. And then Jung said like a symbol like that, you cannot think of. It just pops up on out of itself from the collective, and maybe finally our prayers might have been heard. Maybe it's Elvis. Maybe it's been Elvis all along. But yeah, that's kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, I guess when he did that, If I Can Dream song, it wasn't really a protest song. He stayed somewhere in the middle, and I guess it was like a prayer of how he genuinely felt and what he really wished could happen, and people could feel that for themselves and also sing that. And it kind of was another prayer, because if people repeat these songs, millions of prayers go up. And if that's the prayer he picked and we're singing them to ourselves, then it's another prayer that's going up, that we're all praying again.
Yeah, in that sense, yeah. And that would like ripple out everywhere, and would affect everything, and start to really impact things in that way. And I feel like, yeah, it's really needed, that kind of that kind of, well, prayer, that for it to ripple out again, coming at a better time, to be honest. And I do hope that people would be singing that again.
Me too, man. Well, do you guys have anything else that you'd like to add to it? We can go ahead and wrap it up, or if you got other things you want to say, go for it.
I want to say thanks for this engaging talk, and for the chills and almost crying, and
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Likewise, yes.
Thank you.
We've been talking about doing this for a while, and I'm glad we got together and finally had this talk. I enjoyed it a whole lot.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it was nice talking to you guys for the first time.
Yes, likewise.
Thank you.
So I got a quote from Elvis here that I'd like to say that I think sums it up. It was in the movie too, but the quote really stuck out to me. So Elvis said, "I learned very early in life that without a song, the day would never end. Without a friend, a man ain't got a friend. Without a song, the road would never bend. Without a song, so I keep singing a song." And with that, I'll go ahead and end this transmission. Thank you very much. I hope everybody enjoyed our conversation.